It looks that way.
Oh, it hurts!
The hell?
Heinard?
Oh, it's you that's causing my suffering! Then if I tear you to pieces, the pain will stop!
Don't worry, I have just the cure.
Okay, Axel.
Warning!
In case you've saved yourself some peace of mind and never played this game before, let me break this boss fight down for you.
Burn to the ground! Burn to the ground! Burn to the ground! Burn!
These guys here chasing you down with murderous intent, indestructible and unstoppable. What you need to do is attack these leg joints enough times that this huge mechanoid drops to its knees and allows you to amble on top of it. Then you find this bastard's real body while he lobs fireballs at you and also rains rockets down from the sky on your head in a relentless barrage. And that's not all either. Because the mechanoid is constantly walking forward, it interferes with your movements, and it can be hard to navigate properly or stay away from the center. And in the center, well, this happens.
Wait, what? How would I...
Burn to the ground! Burn to the ground!
How do we actually damage him? Okay, so it's not that.
So, you have to navigate this chaos while finding the right avenues and timings to position yourself properly so you can ensure that you can eventually win the fight.
Finally! Like, just attack after attack!
Good lord!
That was horrible!
The question which was pressing upon my brain at the end of this was, why? Not just simply why to this boss battle. After all, this is a bit of an egregious example. My question is, why is most of this game so not great? Why do previous games feel so much more satisfying? Why does Mega Man X4 feel like a pinnacle, while everything after feels lackluster at best? I only found the answer to my question while I was playing Mega Man 02, specifically during this boss fight.
The best thing to do is to keep close to him so you can do damage to him early. There you go, like that, and like that, and like that, and like that. You bitch. There we go, and I should be able to beat him in the next move. There we go. Once you understand the patterns, it becomes that much easier. It's just about pattern recognition and formulating a good strategy.
And as soon as this statement left my mouth, the answer started to become very clear to me. Patterns, patterns, patterns. The way things are structured around patterns is important, and while this may seem somewhat obvious in principle, it can be difficult to understand how this process plays out in practice. Why one design is objectively worse than another, and beyond that, the general intricacies that can fundamentally make gameplay more or less fun. So, if we consider Mega Man X4 to be a pinnacle, it is my goal here to start from the swamps, the worst examples of flawed design in the series, and as we climb higher and work our way towards the summit, analyze what makes well-designed patterning so important to almost every aspect of the Mega Man X series. So let's dive in. The boss fight against Flame Hyenard isn't great. At the same time, you can pretty much see what they were going for. The very mild action puzzle elements at the beginning involve avoiding the clones while targeting the leg joints to get the mechanoid to fall. The actual fight is a careful dance of maneuvering around to avoid a barrage of attacks, or attacking the real Hyenard while avoiding consistent waves of pincer attacks. Any one of these individual elements, after some heavy modification and rebalancing, would be a suitable baseline for building a fun and challenging boss battle. However, all of them stitched together into this chaotic whirlwind is simply too much. These are the swamps. Tiresome slogs which feel less like meaningful and engaging experiences and more like harsh ordeals for the player to overcome. Segments of gameplay that are more punishment than entertainment. To officially start our arduous journey into the swamps, we'll be jumping into a game which lies around the middle of my unofficial but totally accurate personal rating hierarchy for these games.
Easy, normal, extreme! Oh, normal. Thanks. What the hell is this?
You begin Blaze Heatnix's stage and immediately run into this big metal wheel thing. Each of the 4 orbs on its corners fires a shot every 2 seconds, and these also happen to be the only points on its body which can be damaged. It also takes 4 seconds for it to move across the screen, then it stays still for around 1 second before moving off again. This means that there isn't any symmetry between its move cycle and shooting cycle. This, combined with the peculiar level design, makes it a deceptively difficult mini-boss, as well as being overly aggravating because of how haphazard all of this feels. The entire design could be improved, TBQH, but more on that very soon. You finally managed to do the right amount of maneuvering and coordination to destroy all of the orbs, defeating the mini-boss and moving on to the next stage area. Then, after some platforming and hack and slash action, you get to another room where, well, this happens.
You can't be serious.
Same mini-boss, different level design and movement pattern, a whole new world of frustration. However, you've built up enough experience by this point that as hateful as this feels, it's easier to beat this variation of the mini-boss than the first one. But when you finally beat this mini-boss, and do a bit more hack and slash through the stage, you find out you have to fight not 1, not 2, but 3 more of these bastards. The problem here is that each of these variations is challenging and frustrating in their own right. But any one of them would have served as a great mini-boss, accompanied by a more elaborate stage layout. And more specifically, either the 4th or 5th variation would have been an excellent choice. And this is what I meant earlier by improved design. The balance of careful movement required around hazard zones, matched with precise patterns which allow the player just enough room to breathe, assess the situation, and formulate new strategies, is excellent. And with that said, the very first answer to the question in the title of this video, and an important aspect of the design of the series, appears. Breathing room. Giving the player just enough respite from the chaos so they can look at the screen and properly ask themselves, what the hell is going on here? A very important question. This means that this principle should also apply to the regular progression of stages and levels, adapting to higher degrees of difficulty as time goes on. This introduces the second answer to the title of this video: good progression and scaling. And since I've already spoken a bit about why this is important, I won't delve into any more exhaustive explanations for the time being, but rather show you what it looks like when this is not executed properly. Specifically, the Blizzard Wolfang stage of Mega Man X6.
Probably that. I do not know why game developers thought at one point in time that characters like that in games would... No. Thank God. What the hell? Why are you falling from the ceiling as well? Wait, whoa, what is that? Okay, how am I supposed to do this now? Wait, hang on. I dropped through here, right? Oh no, help. I disappeared. No! No! Okay, good. No! Why would you do that? Oh, lovely. Okay. Okay. No, no, no. No! Why are you like this? Nope, 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 I refuse. Nope, nope, I'm not falling. There we go. Oh crap, what? There were spikes on the other side of the wall? Why? Why are there spikes on the wall as well? Tell me that. Tell me, pretty please tell me why there are spikes on the walls. Oh no, 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 no you don't, no you don't. There you go, you can now. Oh my god. The instinctual thing is to hang back. To hang back so that you don't just drop down into a potential pitfall. But you're not remembering that the walls are slick so you can't hang on to them, and you see the spikes too late. That, honestly, that kind of game design is where the developer is looking at you, and just doing this. That's what the developer is doing to you. And above everything that has been illustrated in this icy stage, this one element is the most infuriating of them all. This is because it directly breaks the rule we are talking about. Good progression and scaling requires that the player be able to reasonably predict what could come next. The player doesn't need to know exactly what challenges they will face down the line, but they do need to be able to read the patterns of their present and previous situations in order to build reasonable expectations for the future. Despite these two genuinely upsetting examples of flawed level and mini-boss design in the same game, I actually really enjoyed Mega Man X6. Some of the nitty-gritty design decisions are strange to say the least, but the majority of the game is fairly enjoyable to play, and contains what might be the third best Sigma fight. No, Mega Man X6 only sometimes breaks the rules surrounding good progression and scaling in a Mega Man game. If we want to look at a game which almost completely disregards this rule, we'll have to look at the bottom of my unofficial but totally accurate personal rating hierarchy to find what is tied for the worst Mega Man X game of all time. Okay, where to begin? The fact that the plot randomly switches focus and hops between different overarching objectives in such a way that the story by the end of the game barely makes sense or resembles what it was in the beginning. He is a virus. He can't be seen or analyzed correctly like other data. You have to feel his evil energy. Zero? What is this? That's the only way to find. Really? This canon in the Mega Man universe, feeling a virus's evil energy? X, you can't dare to find me. Your big heart, that is your kindness and your weakness. I'm okay, trust me. Zero, I don't want to lose you. I'm really worried about you. And I do trust you. That's why I have to fight you here to bring you back. Man, the racing is so bad. I could talk about smaller things too. I could talk about the annoying and incessant messages from Aaliyah, constantly halting gameplay to tell you things you could easily figure out for yourself, This is this constant communication isn't necessary though. As it were. Okay, yeah. This building is seriously damaged. Okay, okay, first up, this is like 3 times that Aaliyah has spoken to me since the mission began at the beginning of the game. Hello, Aaliyah again. Or belaboring the explanations for simple things between missions. And on that note, I could also talk about the bizarrely complicated power-up and upgrade system this game, for some ungodly reason, decided to include. I could talk about the gimmicky addition of the rope slide mechanic. With the way gameplay and levels are constructed, this new mechanic is either useless or egregiously shoehorned in. I didn't even need to grab the rope! I could focus more on the fact that the level design in X5 is often punishing and complex in unnecessary ways, similar to what I've mentioned regarding the Blizzard Wolfang stage from X6, except spread out over the entirety of Mega Man X5. There we go, finally, Jesus. Yet the bosses in X5 sometimes feel like they offer no real challenge. And he's dead already. I just started learning his patterns. But once again, more on that later. And in correlation to what I just mentioned, we can also talk about all of the small unnecessary frustrations which just pop out while progressing through various stages. Or we could also talk about the very specific instances where the narrative makes absolutely no damn sense. Go home, kid, otherwise I'll call the Maverick Hunters. Do as you wish. Wait, what? This entire thing could have been resolved, X, if you had just said, I am a Maverick Hunter, here's my ID. Oh, sorry, sir. Here's the orbiter. But, you know, X is a cop, so... But do you know what's the primary thing that seals the deal? Let's hop back to the Tidal Whale boss fight. Do you see this cute little health bar here? Let's take a moment to compare that to a slightly larger cute health bar, which actually belongs to... Oh, it also belongs to Tidal Whale, huh? Well, let's see how long it takes to get through this upsized health bar. Alright, there we go. That was taking a while. 2 minutes and 15 seconds, give or take. And that's while using the weapon the boss is weak against. And here we come to the third answer to the title of this video. Tedium, or lack thereof. Those unnecessarily lengthy and time-consuming segments of gameplay which bleed the joy and fun out of the experience. The boss rush in every Sigma stage, in every Mega Man X series game, is meant to test your skills and knowledge now that you understand how to beat each stage boss, along with allowing you to fully utilize each boss's weakness. Arbitrarily and absurdly increasing the hit points of each of these bosses to make the boss rush harder is not only lazy game design, it also damages the experience by throwing off the tempo, since they're designed with a certain level of difficulty in mind. It's no wonder that Mega Man X5 has the most grindy and exhausting boss rush compared to any of the other X series games, even those which came after. It wears down and diminishes the experience.
Alright, just a heads up folks, the voiceover audio is going to sound different from here on out due to some changes I recently made to my audio setup. I'll take a brief moment to let you get accustomed to the change by letting you know two things. First, there's going to be an announcement regarding future video projects on this channel at the end of the video. Second, if you're enjoying the video thus far, please take a moment to like and subscribe. I'm fairly close to a few milestones and it would greatly help the channel's growth. Okay, I think you've gotten accustomed to the change by now, right? Right. Yeah, okay, back to the video. And yes, while it is true that other games in the X series do the same thing, none do it quite like X5 does. X5 sits at the precise intersection of uninspired boss design and tedious and frustrating gameplay that making the boss fights any longer simply extracts what little joy there is to be had here. It feels almost tragic that Mega Man X5's abysmal design relegates it to feeling like little more than an annoying chore to complete, rather than a memorable and engaging experience. Be that as it may, there is one game in this series which breaks this rule of fun on purpose. Not because of bad design in terms of gameplay, but how said gameplay is gated and controlled by awful systems.
Mega Man X8.
Mega Man X8 does have its flaws and areas where the design is weak, and we could spend time talking about these flaws. I'm not here to talk about the nitty-gritty though. I'm here to talk about the deep, dark pits the game yeets itself into. Now, let me tell you a story. Take you on a journey. Back in the olden days of the series, it was quite common to see a scene such as this. The limits of technology, combined with developers trying to find clever ways to allow you to save your progress. Flawed? Definitely. But it's a legacy that is hard to fault them for. Now, let's come forward to more recent times. Imagine designing a game with the same flaws and limitations as the old save code system, except engineered anyway so that you have to grind through old stages to pick up collectibles, called metals, in order to refresh upgrades and powers, which in previous games you would simply be able to use without worry. Now imagine one of those upgrades is literally the ability to press continue.
Ready. Here I come.
Oh, I hate it too. This might be the first Mega Man X game that I just quit before it even reached the final stages. Cause I don't know what the fuck this is. I don't know. Is this the objectively worst one? I don't know if I can answer that. I feel like if it's not as bad because of the fact that the levels and everything like that, except for like a few sections, are not as egregiously designed, but that the overall system of like having retry tokens instead of just having like letting you just retry the level from a checkpoint, instead of having a checkpoint system, it's like a retry token. That just boggles my mind. Because of that, I would say it's the objectively worst one, but it's not the worst designed one. That's the problem. This isn't the worst designed Mega Man X game that I've played. Like, what were they thinking? What were they trying to achieve here? Oh. That's even more sad than if it were just outrightly. Yeah, honestly, it's more sad than if it was just the worst, because then you could just say, you could just simply say, yeah, this is the worst. 1, and yeah, that's it. But no, you have to say this is not as bad as others, but it's bad because it was designed poorly from a macros perspective, where being able to retry levels and stuff like that is concerned. Something that has been unchanged in every Mega Man game, every Mega Man X game. Even the ones that utilize password saves weren't as bad as this. This is literal regression. This is literal design regression. If you're an expert player who always beats bosses and stages on the first try, and have no problem with blazing through all obstacles in your way, then this wouldn't affect you much. For the rest of us, having to constantly grind through stages we've already been through before, and repeatedly beating the same challenges we've been through before, such as the boss rush, isn't only unfun, it also serves to throw off your tempo and momentum. How are you meant to get accustomed to Sigma's patterns? If it takes you 20 minutes to reach him, you only have about 4 tries, and then you have to battle and or grind your way through another 20 plus minutes just for a chance at him again? And the fact that I have no more retry chips, so back to the R&D lab. Engineered Tedium. X8 could have been a great game, and I suspect it was a very good game for players much better than myself. However, in game design, one must take into consideration the average skill level. The X series has always been die and retry type games. The stages are fun areas of challenge and exploration, but the meat of the games has always been bosses and mini-bosses, the ultimate goal being to figure out the patterns and conquer them. And it's unfortunate that the game that preceded X8 wasn't as good as it could have been.
Mega Man X7.
Beyond things like this. Oh, too fast, Jesus. The true fatal flaw of Mega Man X7 was the choice to make it 3D. There were a lot of good ideas here, areas where the design space had amazing potential, and a few areas where the execution was excellent. But alas, as it was the X series' first foray into a 3D platformer, the lack of experience and direction was displayed too many times for this game's merits to outshine its flaws. After all, the Sigma fight in X7 is, in my opinion, tied for the second best Sigma fight in the entire series. It's just too bad that the entire game fell short, as a result of the mistakes made while treading uncertain ground. So, now that we've trudged our way through the swamps, let's begin our climb up to the summit. I suspect that Mega Man X3 is where many of the poorly implemented ideas from X5 onwards were born. The game isn't bad, after all, it's certainly better than half of the games in the X series. And yet, it is quite difficult to get innovation right. The way ride armors are implemented into the game is very clunky, to say the least. You need to get the correct upgrade chip for each ride armor in order to use it, and then you can only summon a ride armor at one of the designated platforms. Hell, the first time you encounter a ride armor platform, it's likely you may not even know what it is. Is there some secret to this? This brings a bit of tedium to what would otherwise be smooth gameplay, just slightly beyond the regular backtracking of these games. And after all the work it takes to actually acquire the raid armors, the segments where you can actually use them seem rather short and limited. Mega Man X3 also feels like a paradigm shift where stage design and progression is concerned. The other 3 games at the summit have stages where the entire design revolves around having fun, while overcoming themed challenges which are properly paced, while also containing elements that exist solely for entertainment value. You'll see what I mean in a few minutes. The design for X3 feels like it was stripped of these fun for the sake of fun elements, and focuses instead on amping the difficulty up, but in a way in which the challenge doesn't feel as meaningful. This philosophy of amping up the difficulty while trying to innovate on systems without paying attention to what actually makes these challenges feel rewarding is, in my opinion, what eventually brought the series to ruin. Even though the game has a bit of an albatross around its neck, it still stands as a good example of what a fun Mega Man game looks like, in spite of its flaws. So, since we're ascending to the summit, from here on out we're not pointing out egregious flaws. Instead, we'll be highlighting, in ascending order of ingenuity and perfection, all the best designs in each of the remaining 4 games. Neon Tiger's stage utilizes enemies which also serve as platforms, moving in a variety of patterns to allow you to progress through the stage in a variety of ways, even skipping whole portions of the stage. Tunnel Rhino's stage has an interesting array of environmental traps, some of which do no damage, instead hindering you just enough to put you in harm's way. Sections of verticality interspersed with traps, along with conveyor belts and enemies disguised as boulder traps. It all feels dynamic and engaging, and while my mild complaint about the design of the game in general still stands, each stage and boss still feels like a solid and fun challenge. And speaking of challenge, let's climb a little higher up the summit and explore the one that started it all. The one and only problem that Mega Man X has is that it was the first game of the series. There are a few areas that are a bit unpolished, aspects of the design that could be tightened up, but damn if this game isn't an immense amount of fun. The quintessential Mega Man experience is navigating a gauntlet of traps and hazards, where the difficulty is in recognizing the movements needed and the patterns at play, and adapting to all of it as you push ahead. In essence, the 3 principles I spoke about before. Mega Man X, while not being as polished as some of the games which came after, executes on these principles in fun and interesting ways. Enemies positioned in ways that at first seem aggravating, until you realize exactly how you need to exploit the level design to overcome the challenges they present. And with that being said, both the Flame Mammoth and Chill Penguin stages are amazingly interwoven with all manner of clever pitfalls and traps, all of which are incredibly fun to figure out and overcome. A few areas may feel a bit heavy-handed with the sheer density of traps and enemy placements, such as the Spark Mandrill stage, but a stage such as this still feels satisfying because of its relatively short length. In essence, it doesn't overstay its welcome. Every other stage is fun and challenging in its own right, but there are 2 stages in particular that are worthy of special mention. The first is Launch Octopus's stage, and while I do find the stage itself to be very intriguing, the low gravity effects of water stages always make them dynamic. What I'm talking about is actually Launch Octopus. I find it fascinating and engaging that they saw fit to go beyond giving the boss a weakness and instead made it so the weapon disarmed the boss entirely. And that doesn't stop at Launch Octopus. This also includes Armored Armadillo, since the weakness here takes the armor out of the armadillo. These 2 mildly punny instances are examples of the 4th and final answer to the title of this video. Dynamism. The game's ability to mix things up in interesting, engaging, and fascinating ways while still retaining the fun factor. And the greatest example of this in Mega Man X takes us back to Armored Armadillo's stage, where, to be honest, it basically explains itself. Now, apart from the troll parts of the stage, and areas that surprise you, the fact that you're zooming through the level at just enough speed to both feel excitement as well as being able to react and adapt to the changing trajectory, while also learning the tricks needed to overcome various challenges, as well as snagging power-ups along the way, feels very satisfying. Such dynamism, when done correctly, shakes things up just enough to keep you on your toes while leaving you in joyful anticipation of what's coming next. Various areas within Sigma stage feel a bit over the top where difficulty is concerned, including Sigma himself, but like I said, it was the first Mega Man X game, and pioneering is hard. All in all, amazing amounts of fun. And as we move on to Mega Man X2, we see these principles refined and polished in numerous ways. I will admit there are a few instances where the design is a bit rough, such as with Wire Sponge's weather control stage, and all the very precise jumps you need to make while you're being dragged along by the wind, so you either stick the landing or die. Even with that, quite a bit of dynamism is built into the stage. The shifting weather patterns, the high platforms that can be used to avoid the pitfalls, and the fact that, once again, none of this overstays its welcome. The stage is short and sweet. Morph Moth's Robot Junkyard has some interesting low gravity sections, but the bread and butter of the stage is a host of robot insects. Insects that hop on your head and make you jump around, insects that take over the bodies of old junked robots, and act as mini-bosses, and one particular insect with some great cyclical patterns to its attacks, which require a lot of quick but easily discernible movements. Obviously talking about the boss itself, Morph Moth. All of this makes for a tricky but very fun experience, which once again doesn't overstay its welcome. From Flame Stag's Volcanic Zone stage, where you need to outrun the lava while using specific enemies to find secrets and skip level portions, and overcome enemy-triggered environmental traps in a fun and frenetic flurry, to overdrive ostrich to the desert base stage, where regular platforming sections are interspersed with an extended ride chaser interlude where careful maneuvering leads you to various power-ups, and the override ostrich fight itself is an engaging dance of using terrain and quick movements to outmaneuver the boss and defeat him. A low-gravity water stage where you need to destroy specific parts of a fish mechanoid before meeting a boss who uses strategic periods of invulnerability while splashing in and out of water and sending minions after you. A stage full of sliding crystal traps, slippery crystal slopes, bouncing lasers, and a boss that hides in his shell like a little coward shit while trapping you in crystal and rocketing towards you. A little annoying, that one. And speaking of things that are annoying, I have to admit that all of this... Just go. There we go. Okay, so what we do here is... There we go. Is a bit much. Yet, in spite of the overwhelming and stress-inducing design of Magnus Centipede's central computer stage, once you get the hang of these patterns, it becomes a fun, if intense, obstacle course. The rest of the game is your usual deadly and daring adventure on the road to battling Sigma, a cornucopia of concepts which, though enjoyable overall, does result in some hit or miss moments. An assemblage of mini-bosses preceding Sigma and the boss rush? Hit! These strange platforming puzzles? Why would they do this? This is so blasted annoying. Ah! a miss. The concept is honestly clever, but the frustration is not welcome. This, as you can see, is also the second instance in this game of a stage overstaying its welcome. Tiny blips in an otherwise satisfying experience, though I must say that beating Agile through cheese alone at the end of the stage, very satisfying. And then there's, oh my god, this shit again? Oh geez, why is Zero so strong? Good grief, why is Sigma moving so damn much? For the love of... Actually, this part is pretty interesting. And then you begin to realize that the Sigma fight, starting with Zero, feels very oppressive until you figure out a few key patterns and exploits, and then it's not quite as heavy as it was before. I'm not talking about simply understanding the patterns, or having to figure out which weapon deals damage. I'm talking about honestly oppressive game design, where the strategy is to figure out the built-in way of avoiding said oppressiveness. This leads to a strange imbalance that Mega Man X2 strikes, that more often than not settles itself into its own form of balance once you get the hang of things. Where Mega Man X had instances of dynamism which were simply clever and fun, X2 attempts to overbalance this in an effort to get the player to think on their feet, to be quick and cunning in order to overcome an ordeal, or die. It makes for very aggressive gameplay that works more often than not, but when it doesn't, it stumbles more than it should. So the question is, how do you meld the approaches found in the first two X-Series games to create a near-perfect balance? The answer is not to further overbalance, while introducing more complex systems like X3 did. No. To answer this question, we are finally climbing all the way up to the summit. Now, I'm not gonna lie, aesthetics play a vital role in determining an enjoyable gameplay experience, even if you're not looking for a graphics card melting experience. So understand me when I say that this experience goes beyond the amazing graphical improvement between X3 and X4. It goes beyond the improvements in technology that allowed this game to be a richer and smoother experience in general. While Mega Man X through X3 feels somewhat vague and nebulous in terms of the narrative they are trying to present, X4 feels like you're experiencing an actual story. You feel immersed in the unfolding narrative, and you're able to follow along every point of drama and suspense. And one of the primary driving forces behind this is the fact that they decided to have two mildly diverging story paths for X and Zero. Through the lens of both characters, you get a deeper understanding and appreciation for the characters around them, which is especially true for Zero, as his narrative digs deep into both his emotions and his shadowy past, with a bit of melodrama thrown in.
What? What am I fighting for?
Ah, the drama. In any case, from there, we explore the general level design and stage construction. Every single stage in this game feels like it was carefully crafted to be a wholly unique, dynamic, and engaging experience, yet they are all constructed in such a way that they feel equal in expected length and relative difficulty. The jungle stage is a series of descending levels with pitfalls, waterfalls, and enemies on the walls, which branches into a multi-layered treetop segment with hordes of insects and interesting traps. Cyberspace is a labyrinth of traps, puzzles, and obstacles, and if you manage to make it through each section fast enough, a reward awaits you in the form of a power-up. The Marine base, come on, it speaks for itself. There we go, that's what I was looking for. There we go, there we go, there we go. Now we go to the second section of the stage. Well, get rid of you. Wait until we see. It's X4's version of the Armored Armadillo stage, except instead of a platform rolling through and bouncing around a mineshaft at intense speeds, it's a non-stop land chaser explosion fest and joyride. Whether it be ascending staircases, airships chock full of lasers, sliding through icy slopes, hopping train cars full of enemies and gun placements, or piloting a ride armor across fields and chasms of lava, the design feels so incredibly cohesive and approachable that any frustration felt melts away quickly in the face of genuinely enjoyable gameplay. And speaking of stages, the endgame stages leading up to each of the final 4 bosses is not only effectively designed from a gameplay point of view, but also narratively. Short, sweet, and with just enough hazards and environmental dangers to challenge your knowledge of both the game and your own capabilities having completed the main game. Which brings us, finally, to the bosses. And this is where the game's design truly shines. Each and every boss is unique and well designed, but most importantly, well balanced. They all present a clever challenge, without being overwhelming or obtuse. The perfectly crafted intersection where difficulty slowly turns into proficiency. It's one of the reasons why the boss rush in X4, as well as a few of the other games, feels so smooth. You've gained the tools and experience to turn what was once a steep challenge into a fun series of familiar gameplay loops. It shows you how much you've learned and grown. And the same can be said for each of the final bosses leading up to this. The Colonel, Double, there we go, or Iris. Come on, come on, come on! The General. That's not what I'd like to see though. I don't like that. How do I avoid that? And finally, Sigma himself. The best time to jump is right after he says die. Took too much damage on that one. So I think we should stand here maybe? Stand here maybe? Shit. Okay, good. There seems to be a good place to stand. No, 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 too close! Oh, good. A series of escalating challenges, each of which requires the player to utilize a little more of what they've learned, while creating scenarios where they feel less burdened by what they're facing with time and experience. Balance. That's ultimately what all of this means, what the principles I've listed previously form as a whole. Mega Man X4 is the most satisfyingly balanced game in the entire series. In Mega Man X and X2, the designers and devs were also trying to strike that perfect balance, landing just shy of achieving such. In X3, they attempted to solve this by amping up the difficulty, but sacrificed the dynamic and unique gameplay in the process, along with creating unwieldy systems which just didn't quite meld very well with everything else. In X5, seeing the success of having a narrative take precedence in the previous game, they forced way too many story elements in, which resulted in a muddled mixture, on top of repeating the exact same mistakes they made in X3. In X6, they made strides in correcting the balance, even figuring out ways to better incorporate previously unwieldy systems, but they still hadn't hit the mark. Had the developers continued along this trend, rather than shifting to 3D, they might have once again reached the pinnacle they once had with X4. In X7, unfortunately, they did create a 3D game, and they weren't able to translate the 2D action platformer gameplay and aesthetic to a different format very well. And with the added complications of new and different systems, It often felt as clunky and obtuse as X5 did. For all of its flaws though, it was a surprisingly well-rounded game with a few stellar moments. In X8, they attempted to incorporate action-adventure elements into the design, and in so doing, created a gameplay loop where backtracking and farming of resources is paramount. This doesn't really work in the majority of action platformers, and especially not in a Mega Man X game. There's a difference between returning to previous stages to find hidden power-ups, and having both progress and personal capabilities gated behind the tedious and monotonous gathering of resources, over and over and over again. Strip away all of those complexities, the needless grind, the overbearing and overwhelming design, you have a simpler, more dynamic, and much more satisfying experience. In the end, the X series has a plethora of memorable designs and amazing moments, but it's undeniable that Mega Man X4 stands at the very pinnacle of what makes the series truly shine: fun and rewarding gameplay. Announcement time. So, I've been doing these videos on and off for about 2 years now, putting dormant skills and studies to good use and having fun doing something that I really enjoy doing. I've reached the point now where I have a drive to produce these video projects, as I have always had a love for exploring the intricacies and feelings behind various forms of media. Since I'm endeavoring to create more and better videos anyway, I'm going to dedicate myself to making these videos full-time. That means 2 things. First, a new video every 1 to 3 months, depending on the length of the project. Second, I've created a Patreon page for this channel to support my work. So if you've enjoyed this and or other videos I've created and want to help me make them more frequently, you can become a patron and support my work. Whether you choose to support me on Patreon, or you simply want to like my videos and subscribe to my channel, I appreciate you immensely. Thank you.